Chapter 1 The silence before the storm. The void was never truly silent. To Kalen, it hummed with the faint resonance of dying stars, the static of fractured comms, and the distant echoes of war machines grinding against the fabric of space. The shuttle's hull vibrated as it slipped through the FTL corridor, its engines whispering against the infinite black. Jax leaned back in his seat, boots crossed, a grin plastered across his face like a soldier who had just cheated death and wanted the universe to know it. "The forge is gone," Jax said, voice sharp with satisfaction. "That's their western artery severed. Hegemony fleets will starve out there." "We've bought ourselves years." Kalen didn't look at him. His gaze was locked on the tactical display where the ghost fleet's withdrawal shimmered like fading specters. "Years mean nothing if we waste them. The hegemony doesn't bleed like we do. They adapt, they'll reroute, rebuild, and when they come, they'll come with something worse." Jax snorted. "You're allergic to victory, Kalen. You ever smile?" Kalen's jaw tightened. "I'll smile when the war is over, not before." The shuttle's AI, a cold, monotone voice, broke the tension. FTL corridor stable, Ghost Fleet archives complete, transmission locked. Kalen's eyes narrowed. They're cataloging everything. Every maneuver, every casualty, preparing for escalation. Jax tilted his head. "You sound like you know something." "I know the Ghost Fleet doesn't archive for nostalgia, they archive for survival. That means they've calculated what's coming and it isn't retreat." The tactical display flickered, shifting to a broader map of contested sectors. Red markers pulsed across the grid, each one a hegemony fleet cluster. The western supply lines were fractured, but the eastern front burned brighter, heavier. Kalen traced the lines with a gloved finger, his voice steady, clinical. "They'll consolidate here, push through the eastern corridor. If they deploy the Dreadnoughts, we'll be facing weapons designed to erase civilizations, not fleets." Jax leaned forward, grin fading. "You think the Awaken are real?" Kalen's silence was answer enough. The shuttle jolted as it exited FTL, stars snapping back into clarity. Ahead the Ghost Fleet loomed, silent, colossal vessels drifting like tombstones in the void. Their hulls bore no insignia, no lights, only the faint shimmer of adaptive plating. They were humanity's shadow army, built in secrecy, commanded by no single admiral, answering only to survival itself. Docking clamps locked with a metallic thud. The shuttle's hatch hissed open and the two men stepped into the cavernous bay of the flagship Spectre. Rows of soldiers moved with precision, their faces hidden behind visors, their silence unnerving. No cheers, no celebration, only preparation. Admiral Saren awaited them, her posture rigid, eyes sharp as blades. "The forge is ash, well done," Jax smirked. "Finally, someone who appreciates good work." Saren ignored him, her gaze fixed on Kalen. "You saw the withdrawal?" Kalen nodded. "They're not retreating, they're repositioning." Saren's lips pressed into a thin line. "The Ghost Fleet's AI agrees. The hegemony has awakened something. Our analysts believe it's the Dreadnoughts. Ancient warships buried in their vaults, powered by cores older than their empire." Jax's grin vanished entirely. "You're saying the stories are true, those things can crack planets." Saren's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Not crack, erase, they don't bombard, they consume. If they deploy even one, our fleets won't hold." Kalen's eyes hardened. "Then we build more, double the Ghost Fleet, triple it if we have to." Saren shook her head. "Resources are finite. Every ship we build drains colonies dry. Humanity is already stretched thin. We can't outbuild them, we have to outthink them." The bay doors rumbled open, revealing the endless expanse of the fleet. Hundreds of ships drifted in formation, their silence more terrifying than any roar. Kalen felt the weight of it, the calm before annihilation. He turned to Saren, voice low but firm. "Then we strike first." Jax raised a brow. "Strike first? Against what? We don't even know where they're waking these monsters." Kalen's gaze didn't waver. "Well, no, the Ghost Fleet archives aren't just records, they're predictions, patterns. If the hegemony is moving dreadnoughts, the AI will find the trail." Saren studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll lead the reconnaissance, quiet insertion, no grand battles, find the dreadnoughts before they find us." Jax groaned. "Reconnaissance. My favorite, sneak into the lion's den, poke around, hope we don't get eaten." Kalen's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile he'd allow. "Better than waiting to be hunted." The comms crackled, a voice cutting through the silence. "Admiral, long-range sensors detect anomalous energy signatures in Sector 9, patterns consistent with dormant core activation." Saren's eyes sharpened. "Sector 9, that's deep in hegemony territory." Kalen's pulse quickened, though his face remained stone. "That's where they're waking them," Jax muttered under his breath. "Void, help us." Saren's voice carried across the bay, commanding, unyielding. "Prepare the fleet. Humanity's last stand begins now." The soldiers moved with mechanical precision, their silence louder than any war cry. Kalen felt the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. The forge was gone, but the real war had only just begun. The dreadnoughts were stirring, ancient leviathans of destruction, and humanity stood on the edge of extinction. He turned to Jax, voice steady, resolute. "No more victories to celebrate, only survival." Jax met his gaze, the grin gone, replaced by something harder. Then let's survive loud enough the void remembers us. The bay lights dimmed, alarms pulsing in crimson rhythm. Engines roared to life, breaking the silence at last. The ghost fleet stirred, shadows awakening in the dark, preparing to face the storm that was coming. And in that storm, humanity would either carve its name into eternity or vanish without a whisper. Chapter 2, Sector 9, Shadows. The fleet slid into formation, steel leviathans against the black. The ghost fleet's hulls carried scars from battles past, but their engines burned steady, defiant. Admiral Saren stood at the command dais, her gaze locked on the tactical display. Sector 9 glowed faintly, a wound in the void. Status of the fleet, she asked, voice clipped. Kalen's hands moved across the console, his tone precise. All ships reporting combat readiness. Ghost Wing 1 has forward recon deployed. No anomalies yet aside from the energy surge. Jax leaned against the bulkhead, helmet under his arm. Surge like that doesn't happen by accident. They're waking something, and it's not small. Saren's jaw tightened. The hegemony wouldn't risk activating a dreadnought unless they were certain we couldn't stop them. That arrogance is their weakness. We'll exploit it. The comms officer's voice cut in. Admiral, Ghost Wing reports visual contact. Massive structure, dormant but radiating power. Coordinates locked. Kalen's eyes narrowed. That's no station, it's a cradle. They're incubating the dreadnought. Silence fell across the bridge. The word carried weight heavier than steel. Dreadnoughts weren't ships, they were extinction engines, relics of wars older than humanity's memory. Saren broke the silence. Bring us in tight formation. No one breaks line unless ordered. Engines roared, the fleet advancing like a blade through the dark. As they closed, the cradle emerged, vast skeletal wrapped in shimmering energy fields. Alien glyphs pulsed across its surface, each beat echoing like a war drum. Jax muttered, looks like a tomb. Shame it's about to wake. Kalen's voice was steady. Tombs are for the dead. This is a forge. They're building gods. The cradle shuddered, light spilling from its core. Energy arcs lashed outward, striking the void. The sensors screamed. Admiral, Kalen said sharply, activation sequence confirmed. The dreadnought is stirring. Saren's command was immediate. Ghost Wing, suppress the cradle, target the conduits, break the sequence before it completes. The fleet erupted. Railguns spat fire, torpedoes streaked across the void. Explosions rippled against the cradle's shields, sparks scattering like shattered stars. Alien defenses awoke. Hegemony cruisers burst from hidden bays, sleek predators bristling with weapons. Their comms carried a single phrase, translated by the fleet systems: "You are trespassers." Witness annihilation. Jax slammed his helmet on, voice hard. Guess they're not sending diplomats. Kalen's fingers danced across controls. Shields holding. Ghost Wing 2 engaging intercept. Admiral, if we don't sever those conduits now, the dreadnought will rise. Saren's tone was ice. Then cut them. All batteries, focus fire, no hesitation. The void became chaos. Human ships darted with surgical precision, weaving through alien fire. Torpedoes slammed into conduits, rupturing energy streams. The cradle screamed, its glyphs flickering, but the dreadnought stirred deeper. A shadow moved within, vast and terrible. Its outline pressed against the cradle walls, a leviathan straining to be born. Kalen's voice dropped, almost reverent. It's bigger than the forge, twice the mass. If it wakes, we won't survive. Saren's eyes burned, then we kill it before it breathes. Alien cruisers swarmed, their weapons slicing through the void. One human frigate exploded, fragments scattering like ash. The comms filled with static, then silence. Jax's voice cut through, raw. We're bleeding ships. We need a breach, Admiral. Kalen's hands clenched. There's a weak point, north conduit cluster. If we overload it, the cradle collapses. Saren didn't hesitate. All wings converge on north cluster. Maximum firepower. This is our strike. The fleet pivoted, engines flaring, weapons locked, unleashed. The void lit with fury. Conduits shattered, energy streams ruptured. The cradle convulsed, shields collapsing in bursts of flame. Inside, the dreadnought roared, a sound felt more than heard, vibrating through hulls, rattling bones. Its eyes ignited, twin suns glaring into the void. Kalen's voice was steel. It's awake. The dreadnought tore free, fragments of the cradle scattering like dust. Its hull gleamed obsidian, etched with alien scars. Weapons arrays unfolded, each one a promise of annihilation. Saren's command was sharp, unyielding. All ships, evasive maneuvers, do not engage directly. We bleed it, not face it head-on. Jax growled, bleed it, that thing's a planet killer. Kalen's gaze was locked on the tactical display. Every leviathan has arteries, we find them, we cut them. The dreadnought's weapons charged, energy building to catastrophic levels. The fleet scattered, dodging beams that carved the void into burning scars. Saren's voice carried across the chaos. Humanity doesn't bow, we fight until the void itself remembers our defiance. Kalen's pulse hammered, but his voice remained calm. Then let's carve that memory deep. The battle raged, humanity's fleet dancing against extinction. The dreadnought loomed, awakened, hungry. And in its shadow, the ghost fleet fought not for victory, but for survival loud enough to echo across eternity. Chapter 3, Arteries of the Leviathan. The Dreadnought's first salvo ripped through the void, a beam wide enough to swallow a cruiser whole. The Vigilant rolled hard, its hull screaming under the strain as the energy tore past. Fragments of shattered escorts drifted, glowing embers against the black. The alien warship moved with predatory precision, every weapon array unfolding like a blade drawn from a sheath. Saren's voice cut through the comms. Keep distance. Do not give it a clean shot. We're hunters, not prey. Kalen's eyes locked on the tactical grid. The Dreadnought's energy conduits pulsed in sequence, a rhythm betraying its systems. They're portside ventral arrays. They're overcompensating. That's a bleed point. Jack snarled from the gunnery deck. You want me to thread a shot through a storm of annihilation? Fine, line me up. The fleet shifted, coordinated arcs weaving around the Dreadnought's fury. Human ships darted like knives, their movements erratic, unpredictable. Alien beams carved space into burning scars, but the ghost fleet refused to present a pattern. Every maneuver was chaos sculpted into survival. The Dreadnought's hull glowed, obsidian plates shifting as if alive. Symbols etched into its surface pulsed with alien resonance, each flare a warning of the devastation to come. Its arrogance was palpable, an empire's pride forged into a single vessel, convinced no lesser species could challenge it. Saren's tone was ice. Arrogance blinds, that's our weapon. Kalen fed coordinates across the fleet. Target the ventral blade, coordinated strike, staggered timing. We cut deep, then vanish before it retaliates. The Vigilance cannons locked, energy surging. Jax exhaled, steadying his aim. On your mark, fire. Kalen's command was a blade, the fleet unleashed. Streams of plasma and kinetic slugs converged, hammering the Dreadnought's ventral arrays. Shields flared, shrieked, then buckled. A fracture spread across its hull, glowing like a wound torn open. Alien energy bled into the void, uncontrolled, chaotic. The Dreadnought's response was immediate. A roar of power surged from its core, beams lancing outward in every direction. One struck the Resolute, tearing it apart in a single flash. Another grazed the ironclad, leaving half its hull molten. The void filled with wreckage, human lives extinguished in silence. Saren's jaw tightened, but her voice never wavered. We knew the cost. Stay focused. That wound is proof it bleeds. Kalen's gaze hardened. Every Leviathan has arteries. We've found one. Now we sever it. The Dreadnought shifted, its weapons recalibrating. Alien command signals rippled across its hull, a language of war older than humanity itself. It moved with the certainty of a predator that had never lost, yet the ghost fleet pressed, refusing to yield. Jax's laughter was harsh, defiant. Planet killer, my ass, it bleeds like anything else. The fleet regrouped, weaving through debris. Saren's orders came sharp, precise. Second strike, focus fire, no hesitation. Kalen's voice carried calm authority. Synchronize, 3 waves, first to break shields, second to widen the wound, third to cripple the array. The Dreadnought's eyes flared, twin suns burning brighter. Its arrogance was fury now, insulted by resistance. It unleashed a storm, missiles that split into swarms, beams that bent around evasive maneuvers, gravity pulses that dragged ships into kill zones. The void became a battlefield of impossible physics. Humanity answered with ingenuity. The Vigilant deployed decoy drones, scattering false signatures. The ironclad vented atmosphere deliberately, masking its heat profile. Smaller frigates darted into blind spots, striking and vanishing before retaliation. Every move was calculated chaos, every risk a defiance of extinction. The second wave hit, plasma tore into the fracture, widening it. Alien energy spilled uncontrolled, arcs of lightning dancing across the Dreadnought's hull. Its weapons faltered, momentarily misaligned. The Leviathan staggered, not destroyed, but wounded in a way it had never imagined possible. Kalen's voice was steel. Third wave, now. The fleet converged, every ship committing. Cannons roared, missiles streaked, kinetic slugs hammered. The ventral array collapsed, a cascade of explosions ripping through the Dreadnought's underside. A section of its hull tore free, spinning into the void. Alien systems screamed, their resonance faltering. The Dreadnought reeled, its arrogance shattered for the first time. It was not invincible. It was not untouchable. Humanity had carved its defiance into the Leviathan's flesh. Saren's words carried across the fleet, sharp as a blade. Remember this moment. The void will remember us not as prey, but as predators who struck the Empire's heart. The Dreadnought's retaliation was monstrous, its core ignited, energy surging to catastrophic levels. Kalen's display lit with warnings, an overload building, a weapon beyond comprehension. The Leviathan was preparing to unleash devastation that could erase the fleet in a single breath. Kalen's pulse hammered, but his voice remained calm. It's charging something bigger. We can't outrun it. Saren's gaze locked on the tactical grid. Then we don't outrun. We disrupt. Jax's growl was pure defiance. Tell me where to aim. Kalen's eyes narrowed. The core conduits. If we sever them, it can't release the charge, but it means flying straight into the storm. Silence hung for a heartbeat, then Saren spoke, her voice unyielding. Humanity doesn't bow, we fight until the void itself remembers our defiance. The fleet prepared, battered but unbroken. The Dreadnought loomed, awakened, furious. Its empire watched through its eyes, certain of victory. Yet in its shadow, humanity's ghost fleet stood ready, not for survival alone, but for a strike that would echo across eternity. And as the Leviathan's core flared, Kalen whispered the words that carried through every channel. Then let's carve that memory deep. The Dreadnought's core pulsed like a dying star, a ribbon of violet plasma coiling inward as the overload climbed toward critical. Sensors across the ghost fleet flickered, translating the surge into a single metric. Time to detonation, 47 seconds. Admiral Saren's voice cut through the comm net, stripped of ceremony. All wings lock on conduit bundles. 3-second staggered release. Jax, you lead the first vector. Kalen, keep the interceptors tight on the flank. We pull, we repeat until the charge collapses. A chorus of acknowledgements cracked the channel, each pilot's call sign a short burst of static-filled identity. Jax's fighter, a Raven class with its nose painted scarlet, surged forward. The hull vibrated as the Dreadnought's electromagnetic field tugged at the metal, trying to drag the craft off course. He eased the throttles, feeling the ship's inertia fight against the invisible pull. Conduit A7 in sight, he reported, voice flat. Marking. A thin line of targeting laser snapped onto the conduit's housing, a cluster of alloyed ribs feeding plasma into the core. The laser's red dot steadied, then flashed green as the lock confirmed. Fire on my mark, Jax said. Mark. 4 micro-missiles spat from his wings, each a needle of depleted uranium tipped with a shaped charge. They screamed toward the conduit, piercing the outer shielding in a staccato burst of sparks. The impact sent a shockwave of molten metal rippling outward, exposing the inner plasma feed. The Dreadnought recoiled, a subtle shudder that ran through its hull like a whale reacting to a harpoon. A warning klaxon blared inside the Dreadnought's command spine, but the alien crew, locked in their hierarchy of certainty, did not divert power to defensive grids. Their confidence was a rigid axis. Any deviation meant failure. Kalen's squadron slipped into the wake of the explosion, their fighters hugging the turbulence to mask their signatures. The interceptors, equipped with pulse laser arrays, began a strafing run on the adjacent conduits, B3 and C9. Each pass carved a trench of vaporized alloy, the plasma within sputtering as the magnetic containment fields faltered. Conduit B3 fluctuating at 12%, Kalen muttered, eyes flicking between his HUD and the readout scrolling across his visor. If we hit C9 now, the feedback could destabilize the whole lattice. He rolled his fighter onto a new vector, aligning with the third conduit. The Dreadnought's core flared brighter, a surge of energy threatening to breach the shell. The alien designers had built redundancy, multiple conduits feeding a central crystal, but the crystal itself was a single point of failure. Jax, we need a simultaneous breach on C9, Kalen said, keeping his tone even. 2-second delay, then fire. Jax's reply was a clipped affirmation. He pulled his Raven into a tight loop, using the Dreadnought's own gravitic wake to slingshot himself around the leaking plasma. The maneuver strained his G-suit, but the feedback from the ship's inertial dampeners kept him conscious. C9 locked, he announced. Ready, fire. 2 salvos left his wings, time to strike a heartbeat after Kalen's interceptors laid down a suppressing barrage of high-frequency lasers. The lasers sliced through the conduit's cooling jackets, causing the plasma to froth and vent. The missiles then slammed into the exposed core feed, detonating with a flash that turned the conduit's interior into a brief, artificial sun. The Dreadnought shuddered again, this time more violently. A cracked spider webbed across its outer hull, venting superheated gas into the void. The alien empire's observers, linked through the Dreadnought's neural lattice, felt the rupture as a sudden loss of synchrony, a hiccup in their godlike certainty. Inside the Ghost Fleet's flagship, Saren watched the tactical overlay. The core's charge indicator, which had been climbing toward a catastrophic release, began to dip. The overload was being siphoned off, diverted into the ruptured conduits. Charge dropping, reported the comms officer, a woman named Lyra whose hands never stopped moving over the console. Down to 63%. If we keep the pressure on, it'll fall below critical before the timer hits 0. Saren's gaze never left the screen. Maintain pressure. Rotate squadrons, keep the conduits open. The battle became a rhythm, fighters darting in, laying fire, pulling back as the Dreadnought's retaliatory pulses washed over them, thin lances of ionized energy that sought to scorch the hulls. Each pass left scorched marks on the alien plating, each mark a testament to human ingenuity pressing against an empire that had assumed its technology invincible. Jax's Raven took a glancing hit on its starboard wing. The alloy buckled, exposing a lattice of carbon nanotube fibers underneath. He gritted his teeth, feeling the vibration through his seat, and corrected his flight path with a flick of the stick. Wing compromised, still functional, he said, voice devoid of panic. Lyra's fingers flew over the console, rerouting power to the forward shields of the most exposed fighters. Shield boost at 78%. Hold. The Dreadnought's core, now a chaotic maelstrom of partially contained plasma, began to convulse. The alien crew, unable to reroute enough power to stabilize the crystal, resorted to a desperate measure. They engaged the Dreadnought's secondary weapon, a gravitic pulse designed to crush anything within milliseconds before a full core detonation. A low hum rose from the Dreadnought's belly, the fabric of space itself seeming to tighten. Sensors warned of an incoming distortion wave that would crush the fleet if it reached them. Saren's jaw tightened. All units break formation, spread laterally, maximum thrust. Jax, take the lead vector, pull the pulse away from the main body. Jax acknowledged, pushing his Raven to its limit. The fighter surged ahead, using its remaining momentum to slice through the forming gravitic wall. The pulse struck the Raven's forward shields, a visible ripple of distortion blooming across the hull. The shields flared, absorbing the impact, then collapsed in a cascade of white light. Jax's craft shuddered, alarms screaming as the gravitic wave attempted to compress the fuselage. He fired his aft thrusters at maximum, using the reaction to push himself out of the wave's focal point. The Raven spun, nose pointing toward the void, and he burned hard, putting distance between himself and the crushing field. Behind him, the rest of the fleet followed the maneuver, scattering like shrapnel. The gravitic pulse swept through the space where they had been, a silent hammer that missed its mark. The Dreadnought's core, deprived of its conduits and destabilized by the spreading fissures, began to sputter. The plasma within the crystal oscillated wildly, releasing bursts of energy that lanced harmlessly into the surrounding vacuum as the containment fields failed entirely. A deep, resonant crack echoed through the Dreadnought's superstructure, a sound like a glacier splitting under its own weight. The alien observers, linked to the Dreadnought's mind, felt the fracture as a sudden, overwhelming loss of coherence. Their certainty faltered, replaced by a raw, unfiltered sensation of vulnerability. In the Ghost Fleet's command chamber, Saren exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The charge indicator read 0 and held. The Dreadnought's core was dead, its potential for annihilation dissipated into harmless radiation. Conduits severed, Lyra reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still thrumming in her fingertips. Core stable at null. Saren allowed herself a thin smile, the kind that came not from triumph but from the grim acknowledgement of a job done. Good, now we make sure they remember this. She turned to the viewport where the Dreadnought hung, a wounded Leviathan drifting in the black, its once imperial aura dimmed by scars and smoke. The alien fleet beyond it hovered, uncertain, their formations wavering as the shock of the defeat rippled through their ranks. The Ghost Fleet, battered but unbroken, held its position. Their fighters, smoking and scarred, formed a loose ring around the dying Dreadnought, guns trained, ready to strike again if the enemy dared to retaliate. In the silence that followed, the only sounds were the faint hum of repairing systems and the steady beat of human hearts, each one a defiant pulse against the void, each one a promise that the Empire's arrogance would meet its end not in a whisper, but in the roar of humanity's resolve. Priority burst to all hegemony outposts within 12 light-years, Saren said, not turning from the viewport. Attach the sensor feed of their disabled flagship, the capture of their field commander, and the full status of their fleet. No embellishment, just facts. Jax's fingers flew across his comms console, the soft clack of mechanical keys cutting through the hum of the ship's damaged systems. Incoming hail from the Vera lead cruiser before the ultimatum went out, he said, tapping a playback on his screen. Translations attached, arrogant little pricks. Saren nodded, listening to the translated transmission. Human scavengers, you have committed an act of war against the Vera hegemony. Surrender your vessels and personnel immediately, and we will grant you a painless execution. Refuse, and we will glass every human colony you have ever touched. Send my reply, she said. 10 minutes to power down weapons, disengage thrusters, and prepare all personnel for repatriation to the nearest unclaimed system. Refuse, and we will disable every vessel in your fleet, one by one, starting with your command cruiser. No second warnings. Lyra's console pinged, red targeting brackets blooming across the main display as the Vera lead cruiser, the Vera's fist, burned hard toward the Ghost Fleet's center line. They're not surrendering, she said, her voice flat. 3 heavy cruisers, 7 destroyers, 12 remaining fighter wings. Formations fractured, but they're throwing everything at our Wraith's resolve. Targeting solution for their first salvo is locked on our bridge. Saren's jaw tightened. She'd expected the hegemony's arrogance to override their survival instinct, but not this quickly. Point defense batteries to full. Railguns load tungsten flechettes, target the Fist's engineering bay. Destroyers prioritize their fighter wings and the thrusters of the other 2 cruisers. Corvettes hold fire unless a Vera vessel powers up weapons. The command chamber thrummed as the railguns charged, the low whine building to a deafening crack as 3 rounds punched through the fist's forward shields in rapid succession. The first took out the cruiser's primary communications array, the second shredded its port missile bay, the third slammed directly into the engineering deck, venting half the crew into the void before the bulkhead seals could cycle. Lyra called out kills in a steady monotone. Fighter Wing 6 eliminated, Destroyer 3 thruster array disabled, Cruiser 2 weapons array offline. The Vera fighter wings never made it within 20,000 clicks of the Ghost fleet. Point defense lasers tracked their thrust signatures with surgical precision, picking them off one by one before they could launch a single missile. The remaining 2 cruisers tried to adjust course to support the Fist, only to have their thrusters disabled by corvette fire, leaving them dead in the void, weapons still hot but unable to maneuver. A single escape pod launched from the Fist's ruptured aft hull, its transponder blaring the Exarch's personal identification code. "Intercept it," Saren ordered. "No weapons, just tractor it in. We'll have a guest for the hegemony's leadership to negotiate with." The pod was secured 10 minutes later, its occupant, Exarch Kale, the hegemony's highest-ranking field commander in the Outer Rim, cuffed and sedated in the brig before he could even process his capture. The rest of the Vera fleet drifted silently, their weapons powered down, their crews huddled in sealed compartments waiting for orders that would never come. Jax confirmed the priority burst had transmitted to all hegemony outposts, the encrypted feed guaranteed to reach the hegemony's core worlds in 4 months, standard jump drive transit time. "Message receipt confirmed from 3 outposts already," he said, a faint hint of satisfaction in his voice. "Looks like they got the memo." Lyra leaned back in her chair, rubbing a fresh bruise on her forearm where a console panel had slammed into her during the earlier fight. Her charge indicator still read null, the Dreadnought's core dead and harmless behind them, its Imperial plating scorched black by their EMP charge. "Casualty reports coming in," she said, passing the datapad to Saren. "2 corvettes lost, 12 wounded, no fatalities on our end. The Veras lost 312 personnel, plus the rest of their fleet's crews in stasis pods we pulled from the escape pods." Saren took the datapad, her gaze fixed on the viewport where the disabled Dreadnought drifted alongside the broken Vera fleet. She won the battle, but the war was far from over. The hegemony would send more ships, bigger, meaner, before the year was out, but for now this was enough. They made their point. They'd shown the hegemony that human ships didn't run, that human soldiers didn't break, that the void didn't belong to empires that thought they owned the stars. "Get the repair crews on the corvettes first," she said, turning back to her console. "Then prep a long-range probe to monitor the jump lane. I want to know the second the hegemony sends a response fleet, and get me a cup of actual coffee, not that synth swill the mess hall passes off as brew." Jack snickered, already pulling up the repair schedule. "On it, Commander. Got a fresh batch of real grounds stashed in the bridge locker. Figured we'd earned it after taking down their big toy." The hum of the ship's systems picked up as repair crews moved to patch the hull breaches, the faint smell of burnt insulation mixing with the sharp tang of coolant. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and bright, the void silent but for the faint ping of distant sensor sweeps from the Vera's remaining functional buoys. For the first time since the Ghost fleet had dropped out of jump 3 days prior, the silence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a pause, a breath before the next fight. Chapter 6, The Silent Reckoning. The bridge lights dimmed as the tactical overlays shifted, painting the void in crimson arcs and pale blue vectors. Saren leaned forward, her jaw tight, eyes locked on the Dreadnought's fractured silhouette. The Vera fleet was gone, scattered wreckage drifting like bones in the dark. But the Dreadnought remained, silent, wounded, yet not defeated. "Status on the Dreadnought's core?" Saren asked, her voice clipped. "Still radiating," Jax replied, fingers dancing across the console. "Their primary reactor is in containment mode. They're not dead, Commander, just waiting." Saren's gaze narrowed. Waiting was dangerous. Waiting meant calculation. The hegemony didn't build ships to die quietly. "Bring up the probe feed," she ordered. The viewport shimmered, resolving into the probe's perspective. The Dreadnought's hull was a scarred labyrinth of ruptured plating and exposed conduits, yet deep inside, faint pulses of energy rippled like a heartbeat. The ship wasn't just alive, it was listening. "Commander," Lieutenant Rin spoke from the comms station, his tone low. "Intercepted fragments from their encrypted channel, not full sentences but patterns, repeating intervals, almost like they're talking to someone," Saren finished. The silence on the bridge was heavy. Every officer knew what that meant. "Reinforcements. Options?" Saren asked, her voice steady. Jax exhaled. "We could finish it. Push the corvettes in, overload their reactor, and scatter the remains. But if we do, we burn half our fleet's reserves. And if the hegemony sends a response fleet, we'll be limping." Saren's eyes flicked to the tactical map. The Ghost fleet was battered but functional. The corvettes were patched, the cruisers scarred but holding. They had strength but not enough to waste. Or, Rin added, we let it drift, monitor, see who comes calling, use it as bait. The idea hung in the air like static, risky, calculated, human. Saren's lips curved into the faintest smile. Bait it is. The crew exchanged glances, the kind of look soldiers gave when they knew the plan was insane but brilliant. Humanity had survived by turning weakness into traps, by making arrogance bleed. Deploy mines along the drift corridor, Saren ordered. Silent mode, no emissions. The Dreadnought to look like easy salvage. Jax nodded, already queuing commands, and when their fleet arrives, Saren's voice was calm, almost cold. We remind them that the void doesn't forgive arrogance. The hum of engines deepened as the Ghost fleet shifted position, sliding into the shadows of fractured asteroids. Mines detached from their bays, drifting silently into the black, invisible to casual scans. The Dreadnought floated, its wounds glowing faintly, a predator feigning weakness. Hours passed. The crew moved with quiet precision, every action deliberate. The void was patient, but the humans were more so. Then the sensors flared. Contact, Rin snapped. Jump lane disturbance, multiple signatures, large tonnage. The bridge stiffened. The hegemony had answered. Numbers, Saren asked. 6 capital ships, minimum escorts in formation. They're coming in hot. Jax muttered under his breath. That's not a rescue fleet, that's a hammer. Saren's eyes hardened, and were the anvil. The viewport lit as the hegemony fleet tore into real space, their hulls gleaming with arrogance, weapons arrays bristling. They moved with precision, confidence born of centuries of dominance. To them, humanity was a nuisance, a rebellion to be crushed, but the Dreadnought's signal drew them closer, like moths to flame. Hold fire, Saren commanded. Let them commit. The hegemony ships closed in, their escorts fanning out, scanning the wreckage. The Dreadnought pulsed faintly, sending its silent call. The fleet responded, moving into recovery formation. Now, Saren whispered, the mines ignited, the void erupted in silent fury. Invisible charges detonated across the drift corridor, ripping through escorts, shattering hulls, tearing capital ships into burning fragments. The hegemony fleet staggered, caught in the trap, their arrogance bleeding into chaos. Target their command ship, Saren ordered. Cut the head. The Ghost fleet surged from the shadows, weapons blazing. Corvettes darted like knives, cruisers unleashed torrents of plasma, railguns hammered through shields. The void became a storm, human precision against alien pride. On the viewport, the hegemony command ship reeled, its shields collapsing under the coordinated assault. Direct hit on their bridge, Jax reported, voice sharp. Command net disrupted. The alien fleet faltered, coordination unraveling. Ships fired blindly, retreating, colliding with debris. The Dreadnought pulsed again, but this time its signal was drowned in chaos. Finish them, Saren said. The Ghost fleet pressed the attack, relentless, surgical. By one, the hegemony ships fell, their arrogance shattered by human resolve. When the void finally stilled, wreckage drifted in silence. The Dreadnought remained, scarred, silent, its call unanswered. The bridge was quiet, the crew staring at the devastation. Humanity had struck again, not with numbers, but with cunning. Saren leaned back, her voice calm, steady. Send the probe deeper into the lane. The hegemony won't stop, but now they know, every time they come, they bleed. Jax smirked, exhaustion in his eyes. And we drink real coffee. The crew chuckled, tension breaking for a moment. Outside, the stars burned cold, indifferent. But humanity had carved its defiance into the void, one trap at a time. Saren's gaze lingered on the Dreadnought. It wasn't over. The silence was only the beginning. Prepare the fleet, she said softly. The war has just begun. Chapter 7, the silent calculus. The wreckage drifted like frozen shrapnel across the void, jagged silhouettes against the pale starlight. The Ghost fleet held formation, engines whispering low, weapons cycling down but never cold. Every officer on Saren's bridge knew the silence was temporary. The Dreadnought loomed ahead, scarred but intact, its hull a cathedral of alien arrogance. Telemetry confirms, Jax said, eyes locked on the tactical display. The Dreadnought's core is still active, minimal emissions, but it's alive. Saren's voice was steady, clipped. Alive means calculating, they're not retreating, they're waiting. The crew exchanged glances. Waiting was worse than charging. Waiting meant the enemy had a plan. The comms officer broke the tension. Probe reports residual signals across the lane. Hegemony reinforcements are inbound. Estimated time 40 minutes. Saren leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the Dreadnought. 40 minutes to finish what we started, or 40 minutes to die. No one spoke. The weight of her words pressed against the steel walls. Jax finally broke the silence. We can't brute force that hull. Railguns barely scratched it. Plasma volleys destabilized the outer plates, but the core's shield lattice is still intact. Saren nodded. Then we don't brute force, we cut the lattice apart. The engineering chief, a grizzled veteran named Kale, frowned. That lattice is adaptive. It learns. Every strike we make it recalibrates. Unless, he hesitated, then continued. Unless we overload it with contradictory inputs, force it to chase ghosts. Jax's smirk returned, sharp and tired. Ghost Fleet specializes in ghosts. Saren's eyes narrowed. Explain. Kale tapped the console, pulling schematics onto the main display. We scatter our fire across multiple vectors. Randomized, chaotic, but coordinated enough to appear deliberate. The lattice will attempt to counter every strike, but the contradictions will force it into recursive failure. It'll burn itself out trying to solve the unsolvable. Saren studied the projection. Controlled chaos. Risk. Kale's jaw tightened. If the lattice stabilizes before collapse, it'll rebound. The feedback could vaporize half our fleet. The room went still. Saren's voice cut through the silence. Then we don't give it time to stabilize. We push until it breaks. The order was clear. The calculus was brutal. Signal the fleet, Saren commanded. Prepare for ghost pattern assault. Randomized vectors, overlapping fire. No hesitation, the comms officer relayed the command. Across the void, ships shifted, engines flaring as formations dissolved into scattered, unpredictable arcs. The ghost fleet became a storm of fragments, each vessel moving with surgical unpredictability. The Dreadnought stirred, its hull pulsed faintly as if sensing the trap. 35 minutes until reinforcements, Jax reported. His voice was calm, but his hands clenched the console. Saren's gaze never left the viewport. Then we finish in 30. The first volley struck. Plasma bursts lanced across the Dreadnought's hull. Railgun slugs ricocheted against the shield lattice. The alien defense shimmered, recalibrating, shifting its geometry to counter. Then the second volley came, angled, misaligned, deliberately contradictory. The lattice faltered, its glow flickering. Kale's voice was tight. It's working. Lattice response is fragmenting. The Dreadnought retaliated. Beams of searing energy carved through the void, slicing past Ghost Fleet ships. One destroyer caught the blast, its hull splitting open, venting fire and bodies into the abyss. Destroyer 7 lost, Jax reported, his tone clipped, professional. Saren's jaw tightened. Keep pressure, no retreat. The fleet obeyed. Volleys hammered in chaotic rhythm, each strike designed to confuse, to overload. The lattice shimmered violently, its geometry twisting, collapsing, reforming. Kale's voice rose. Feedback spike detected, it's destabilizing. The Dreadnought's hull pulsed, brighter, erratic. Energy arcs lashed across its surface, uncontrolled. 20 minutes until reinforcement, Jax said. Saren's voice was calm, unyielding. We break it now. The Ghost Fleet unleashed everything. Plasma storms, railgun barrages, missile salvos, all converging in orchestrated chaos. The lattice convulsed, its glow fracturing into shards of light. Then it happened. The shield collapsed inward, imploding in a cascade of energy. The Dreadnought shuddered, its hull cracking, fragments peeling away like molten armor. Kale's voice was raw, core breach imminent. The Dreadnought screamed, not sound but a pulse, a psychic resonance that rattled every human mind on the fleet, a final defiance, a dying empire's roar. Saren gritted her teeth, forcing the words out. Hold formation, do not falter. The Dreadnought convulsed once more, then split apart. A shockwave rippled through the void, scattering debris, rocking ships. The Ghost Fleet held, battered but intact. Silence followed. The Dreadnought was gone. Jax exhaled, his voice hoarse. Target neutralized. Kale slumped against his console, sweat streaking his brow. We forced a god to choke on its own pride. Saren's gaze swept the wreckage. Her voice was steady, cold. And the hegemony will send another, stronger, smarter. They will not forgive this. The comms officer spoke softly. Reinforcements are still inbound, 19 minutes. Saren leaned back, her eyes hard. Then we vanish. Ghost Fleet leaves nothing but whispers. Engines flared. The fleet scattered into the void, slipping into hidden lanes, leaving behind only wreckage and silence. The Dreadnought was gone, but the war was not. Humanity had carved another scar into the arrogance of empires, and the void, indifferent as ever, carried the whispers forward. 14 light seconds out, 3 hegemony picket corvettes dropped out of warp, active sensor pings, sizzling through the debris field where the Xylo's Dreadnought had disintegrated 6 minutes prior. Their crews had been the 3 corvettes hung in the vacuum like silent sentinels, their hulls scarred from recent skirmishes. Sensor pings pulsed outward, each burst a thin line of light that cut through the glittering shards of the Xylo's Dreadnought. Lieutenant Mara Voss stared at the readouts on her console, the green blips of the picket ships overlapping with the chaotic debris field. All right, listen up, she said, voice low but carrying over the intercom. We've got 6 minutes since the Dreadnought went down. Whatever's left is either scrap or a trap. Keep your weapons hot and your eyes on the motion sensors. No one gets complacent. Corvette Aegis's commander, Jalen Core, replied from his bridge. Copy that. We're seeing anomalous heat signatures near the core fragment, about 200 meters off our port bow. Could be residual reactor glow, could be something else. Mara flicked a switch, pulling up a thermal overlay. A faint bloom of orange pulsed irregularly like a heartbeat. That's not reactor decay. Reactor ghosts fade smooth. This is pulsing. Keep us at 10 clicks. Maintain passive scan. I want a visual on that fragment before we get any closer. The Aegis eased forward, its thrusters whispering against the void. Debris drifted like icy confetti, shards of alloy, twisted conduit, the occasional charred fragment of alien hull. Each piece reflected the corvette's running lights, casting fleeting glints that made the darkness seem alive. On the bridge of vigil, Sergeant Rook Nesha monitored the motion tracker. We've got micro-movements, sub-meter, intermittent. Could be debris shifting under its own gravity or something moving inside the wreckage. Mara's jaw tightened. Keep the tracker active. If it's organic, we'll see a pattern. If it's just rock, it'll be random. A sudden spike flashed on the tracker, a tight cluster of returns, then silence. Rook frowned. That wasn't random. It was a burst, then nothing. Lock onto that point, Mara ordered. Fire a low-yield probe. We need eyes, not guesses. The probe launched, a sleek dart of blackened titanium that sliced through the debris field. Its internal cameras fed back a grainy feed, a jagged section of the Dreadnought's forward hull, half buried in a cloud of ionized dust. Embedded in the metal was a structure unlike any human or hegemony design, a lattice of translucent filaments pulsing with a soft blue light. What the hell is that? Kor's voice crackled, half suspicion. Mara leaned forward, her reflection faint in the viewport. Looks like a containment field. Xylo's tech we've never seen. If it's still active, it could be holding something or keeping something out. A soft chime sounded from the comms, an encrypted burst from the Vigil's science officer, Dr. Alira Sorn. Captain, I'm reading a resonance frequency matching the Xylo's communication band, but modulated. It's not a distress signal, it's a repeating pattern. I think it's a beacon. Mara's mind raced. A beacon for what? Reinforcements. Or a warning. Either way, we need to know if it's friendly or hostile before we get closer, Kor said, requesting permission to deploy a micro-drone for close-in inspection. Granted, Mara replied. Keep it under 50 meters. If it gets hostile, we pull back immediately. The drone, a hexapod with adaptive camouflage, slipped from the Aegis's bay. Its legs retracted, allowing it to glide on a thin ion thrust. It navigated the debris with eerie silence, avoiding larger fragments by micro-adjustments that looked almost instinctive. Inside the drone's feed, the blue lattice grew clearer. Filaments intertwined like veins, each node emitting a faint hum. At the center of the lattice sat a pod, oval, smooth, about the size of a human torso, its surface rippling as if made of liquid metal. Drone hold position, Mara whispered. Initiate spectral analysis. The drone's sensors swept across the pod. Readings flooded in, exotic isotopes, a flux of gravitons, and a low-level electromagnetic field that pulsed in sync with the beacon pattern. Captain, Alira's voice came through, tinged with urgency. That pod is generating a containment field that's stabilizing the surrounding debris. If we disrupt it, we could cause a cascade, potentially igniting the remaining reactor core. Mara's eyes narrowed, so it's a failsafe. The Xylos built a dead man's switch. A sudden, sharp ping echoed from the Vigil's tactical display. Contact, unknown vector, bearing 12, range 4.3 clicks, closing at 0.2 C. All heads snapped to the main viewer. A sleek, dark shape emerged from the shadows, a vessel unlike any hegemony or Xylo's design. Its hull absorbed light, seeming to drink the stars around it. No visible thrusters, no weapon ports, just a smooth, featureless ovoid that glided forward with unsettling grace. Unknown contact, Kor said, voice tight. Identify. Mara's fingers flew over her console, pulling up the ship's signature database. Nothing matched. The vessel's mass displacement suggested a drive that warped local spacetime without the usual emissions, a technology far beyond anything they'd encountered. It's not hegemony, it's not Xylos, she said, it's something else. The unknown vessel halted, hovering just beyond the debris field. A thin beam of violet light lanced from its prow, striking the blue lattice. The filaments flickered, then flared brighter as if reacting. They're probing the field, Alira breathed, if they're trying to break it. Mara's mind snapped to the worst case. If they destabilize that pod, we could lose the entire sector to a runaway reaction. We need to stop them, but we can't just blast them too close to the pod. She turned to Kor. Prepare a focused EMP burst, low yield, directed at the incoming vessel's sensor array. We'll blind it long enough to slip a boarding team onto the pod and secure it. Kor nodded. EMP ready in 30 seconds. Boarding team standby. Mara keyed the comms to her Marines. Listen up. We're sending in a fire team to secure the pod. You've got 2 minutes to get in, plant a stabilizer, and get out. No heroics, just get the job done and return to the Aegis. Understood. A chorus of affirmative replies crackled back. The Marines suited up, their exoskeletons hissing as they sealed. Each carried a compact plasma cutter and a magnetic grappling line designed to latch onto alien alloys. The EMP charge hummed to life, a thin sphere of violet energy forming beneath the Aegis's bow. Mara counted down silently. 3, 2, 1, fire. The pulse shot forward, a silent wave that washed over the unknown vessel. Its surface rippled, then went dark for a heartbeat, sensor arrays flickering offline. The violet beam from its prow sputtered and died. Now, Mara shouted. The boarding team launched from the Aegis's dorsal hatch, their lines snapping taut as they propelled themselves toward the pod. The debris field blurred past, shards whizzing like bullets. The unknown vessel, now blind, began to rotate sluggishly, its occupants scrambling to restore power. Marine leader Sergeant Delia Rios gripped her cutter, eyes locked on the pod's surface. Contact in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now. She slammed the cutter into the lattice. Blue filaments sparked, resisting the plasma, but the cutter's edge sang as it sliced through. A section of the field collapsed, revealing the smooth oval of the pod. Dahlia slapped a magnetic stabilizer onto its surface. The device emitted a low-frequency pulse that began to sync with the pod's own resonance, reinforcing the faltering field. "Stabilizer engaged," she reported, voice steady despite the adrenaline. Extracting now, the team retraced their path, lines recoiling as they pulled back to the Aegis. Behind them, the unknown vessel's sensors flared back to life. Its hull shifted, revealing a cluster of weapon ports that glowed a menacing crimson. "They're locking on," Core warned. Mara's hands flew across the controls. "Full thrust, evasive pattern Delta 7. Vigil, lay down, suppressing fire on those ports. Keep them busy." The Vigil's railgun spat tungsten slugs, streaking toward the alien ship. Impacts blossomed in brief flashes of violet white as the rounds struck the hull, sending shockwaves that rattled the unknown vessel's frame. The Aegis lurched forward, engines screaming as it punched through the debris field, dragging the boarding team with it. The unknown vessel fired a lance of dark energy that sliced through space, missing the Aegis by mere meters as it veered hard to port. "Clear of the engagement zone," Mara called, breathless. "Status on the pod," Alira's voice came back, relieved. "Field stabilizing at 94%. The pod's core is intact. We've bought ourselves some time." Mara allowed herself a fraction of a second to let the tension ease. "Good work, everyone. Keep monitoring the unknown. If they try again, we'll hit them harder. For now, we secure this asset and get the hell out of this graveyard." The corvettes pulled away from the shattered Dreadnought, forming a tight triangle as they accelerated toward the rendezvous point. Behind them, the Xylo's debris field glimmered faintly, an eerie graveyard of metal and light, now guarded by a stubborn human resolve and a mysterious alien pod that pulsed like a heart in the void. The stars beyond waited, indifferent, but for the first time in hours, humanity held a piece of the enemy's technology, and perhaps a chance to turn the tide. Chapter 10, The Breach. The void trembled with the clash of wills. The alien Dreadnought, half shattered yet still defiant, loomed like a continent of steel and malice. Its hull bled violet light from ruptured conduits, but the vessel's core systems remained alive, an empire's arrogance refusing to die. On the bridge of the Aegis, Mara's voice cut through the static. "All ships, tight in formation. We're not outrunning them, we're breaking them." The Vigil's captain responded without hesitation. Railguns reloaded, targeting their ventral ports. "We'll keep their eyes off your boarding team." The human flotilla shifted, engines burning hard, weaving through the debris field with precision that bordered on surgical. Every maneuver was calculated, every burst of fire a message. Humanity would not yield. Inside the boarding pod, Alira's team braced as magnetic clamps locked against the Dreadnought's fractured hull. Sparks cascaded across the viewport. The pod's hatch cycled open, revealing a corridor that looked less like a ship and more like a cathedral of alien engineering, arched supports of black alloy, walls pulsing with faint bioluminescence. "Move," Alira ordered, her tone clipped. "We're ghosts until proven otherwise." The squad advanced, rifles raised, boots silent against the strange flooring. The air was thin, metallic, tinged with ozone. Every step carried the weight of history. No human had ever set foot inside a Xylo's Dreadnought and lived to tell it. Back outside, the Dreadnought retaliated. A lance of dark energy erupted from its dorsal array, slicing through the void. The Vigil rolled hard, the beam grazing its flank and vaporizing a section of armor. "Damage control report," barked the Vigil's captain. "Portside plating compromised, but we're holding, returning fire." Tungsten slugs hammered the Dreadnought's weapon ports, forcing its beam to flicker. The alien ship shuddered, its arrogance cracking under the relentless human assault. Inside, Alira's squad reached a chamber that pulsed like a living heart. At its center floated a crystalline core, suspended in a lattice of energy. It radiated power, raw, unfiltered, terrifying. "Command, we've found something," Alira whispered into comms. "Central nexus, possibly their control matrix." Mara's reply was immediate. "Secure it. If it's what we think, it could turn the war." The squad moved to encircle the core. One of the Marines, Kale, produced a containment field generator. "Setting up stabilization. This thing's output is off the charts." Suddenly, the walls trembled. Alien glyphs ignited across the chamber, and a low hum filled the air. The Dreadnought was aware of them. "Contact," Alira snapped. Figures emerged from the shadows, Xylo's guardians, tall and angular, their armor fused with living circuitry. Their weapons crackled with violet energy. The firefight was immediate and brutal. Human rifles spat bursts of magnetized rounds, tearing through alien plating. The Guardians retaliated with arcs of searing energy that scorched the walls. Kale shouted over the chaos. Field S at 60%, I need 30 more seconds. Hold them, Alira commanded. The squad formed a defensive perimeter, every shot precise, every movement disciplined. They weren't soldiers anymore, they were surgeons cutting through inevitability. Outside, the Aegis and Vigil pressed their assault. Mara's voice carried across the fleet. Focus fire on their dorsal array by the boarding team time. Railguns thundered, missiles streaked, the Dreadnought's hull fractured further, chunks of alloy spinning into the void, yet still it fought, its empire's pride refusing surrender. Inside, Kale's generator flared. Nexus contained, we've got it, Alira exhaled sharply. Good, now we leave. But the chamber's walls shifted, sealing exits with slabs of alloy. The Dreadnought wasn't letting them go. Command, we're locked in, Alira reported. Mara's response was steel. Then we'll carve you a way out. Hold position, the Aegis surged forward, engines screaming, ramming into the Dreadnought's flank. Metal screamed against metal. The impact tore open a breach near the boarding team's location. Alira saw the rupture through her visor's feed. There's our exit, move, the squad sprinted, dragging the stabilized Nexus with them. Alien Guardians pursued, but human fire cut them down with ruthless efficiency. They reached the breach as the Aegis's hull loomed beyond. Magnetic grapples fired, pulling the squad across the void. One by one they landed on the Aegis's deck, battered but alive. Alira keyed her comm. Package secured, we're clear. On the bridge, Mara allowed herself a rare smile. All ships disengage, we've taken their heart, now we bleed them dry. The flotilla pulled away, engines flaring, leaving the Dreadnought crippled and howling in silence. Humanity had done the impossible, infiltrated the enemy's pride, stolen its core, and lived to fight another day. But as the stars swallowed the battlefield, Mara's gaze lingered on the Dreadnought. It wasn't dead, not yet, and she knew this was only the beginning. The void whispered and humanity listened. The war had shifted. The Empire's arrogance had met its match, and the next clash would decide everything. Chapter 11, The Silence Before the Detonation. The Dreadnought hung in the void like a wounded predator, its hull fractured, its systems bleeding static across the comm spectrum. Yet it remained alive, too alive. Mara knew it. Every officer on the Aegis felt it in their bones. The Empire's arrogance had built this Leviathan to endure annihilation, and it was not finished. On the bridge, the tactical display pulsed with hostile signatures. The Dreadnought's escorts were regrouping, forming a perimeter around their crippled flagship. Mara's voice cut through the tension. Status of the Nexus. Alira's reply came sharp, steady, contained, stabilized. It's feeding low-level pulses into our systems, but controllable. Engineering says it's like holding a star in a box. Then keep the box sealed, Mara ordered. Weapons, prepare saturation fire. We're not leaving them a chance to recover. The flotilla shifted formation. Human ships, scarred, patched, but unbroken, aligned in a crescent around the Dreadnought. Railguns locked, missile bays cycled, plasma lances charged. The silence before the storm stretched thin. The Dreadnought moved. Not a retreat, not a surrender. Its fractured hull plates reconfigured, folding inward, revealing a core chamber glowing with alien light. A weapon, massive and unfinished, began to awaken. Command, they're charging something, Alira warned. Energy spike is off the charts. Mara's jaw tightened. They're trying to erase us in one shot. Helm evasive pattern delta. Fire control all batteries now. The void erupted. Human ordnance streaked across the black, slamming into the Dreadnought's exposed chamber. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing chunks of alloy free, yet the glow intensified. The weapon was still building. Not enough, muttered Lieutenant Coret Tactical. We're scratching the paint. Mara's gaze locked on the Nexus feed. The stolen core pulsed in rhythm with the Dreadnought's weapon, a link, a weakness. Alira, Mara said, voice low but lethal. Can you force the Nexus to resonate, overload their weapon before it stabilizes? Alira hesitated only a fraction. Risk is catastrophic. If it backfires, we detonate ourselves. Understood, do it. Alira's squad moved fast, rerouting conduits, amplifying the Nexus's pulse. The Aegis shuddered as energy surged through its systems, lights flickering, hull groaning. The Dreadnought's glow faltered, then spiked erratically. On the enemy vessel, fractures widened. Alien comms screamed across the spectrum, orders, panic, denial. The Empire's arrogance was cracking. Resonance achieved, Alira reported, sweat beading her brow inside the helmet, weapon destabilizing. The Dreadnought convulsed. Its core chamber flared, then imploded inward, collapsing under its own power. A shockwave rippled outward, slamming into the flotilla. Shields flared, hulls buckled, but the human ships held. When the light faded, the Dreadnought was silent, not destroyed but gutted, its weapon gone, its pride shattered. The bridge of the Aegis was hushed. Every officer stared at the tactical display, waiting for retaliation. None came. The escorts drifted, leaderless, their formations breaking. Mara exhaled slowly. Signal the fleet, maintain distance. We don't finish them here, we bleed them across the stars. This war isn't won in a single strike. Alira's voice carried a rare edge of awe. We crippled their dreadnought, they'll never forget this. They'll never forgive it, Mara corrected. Her eyes were steel, her tone absolute. And that's the point. Humanity doesn't beg for survival, we carve it. The flotilla reformed, engines burning bright against the void. The dreadnought remained behind, a husk of arrogance, whispering its defeat into the silence. But Mara knew the whispers would spread. Across the Empire, across the galaxy, the tale would grow. Humans had stolen the heart of the dreadnought, turned its weapon against itself, and lived. The void listened, and for the first time it carried humanity's voice louder than the Empire's. Yet beneath the triumph, Mara felt the weight of inevitability. The dreadnought was crippled, not dead. The Empire would rally. The next clash would not be about survival, it would be about dominance. She turned to her crew, her words cutting through the silence like a blade. Prepare for Chapter 12. The Empire will come for us with everything they have, and when they do, we'll show them what humanity does when cornered. The crew answered with a single word, unified, unshaken. Stand. The void trembled. Humanity was ready. Chapter 12. The Empire's reckoning. The void was no longer silent. It pulsed with the distant thunder of engines, a storm gathering across the black. Humanity's flotilla hung at the edge of a fractured star system, its ships scarred but aligned, their formation precise, deliberate. Every hull bore the marks of survival, and every crew inside carried the weight of inevitability. Mara stood at the command dais, her gaze fixed on the tactical display. The Empire's response was unfolding, massive fleets converging, their arrogance sharpened into vengeance. The crippled dreadnought had been a humiliation they could not ignore. Now they came with everything. Contact reports confirmed 3 carrier groups, 6 heavy cruisers, and a swarm of escorts. Alira announced, her voice steady but edged with tension. They're burning hard, no hesitation. They want us cornered, Mara's reply was calm, surgical. They think cornering humanity is possible. They're wrong. Signal all ships. We hold formation. We bleed them before they reach firing range. The comms officer relayed the order, and across the flotilla, captains responded with clipped affirmations. No bravado, no theatrics, just the cold efficiency of soldiers who had already faced death and refused to yield. The Empire's fleet emerged from the dark, their ships gleaming with alien precision. The carriers loomed like predators, launching waves of interceptors that streaked forward in tight, disciplined swarms. The escorts followed, a wall of firepower designed to crush resistance. Interceptors inbound, Alira reported. 200 strong, they're testing our perimeter. Mara's eyes narrowed. Deploy the net, no wasted shots, make them pay for every meter. Human destroyers shifted, their weapons locking into coordinated arcs. A lattice of fire erupted, precise bursts tearing through the alien swarm. Interceptors disintegrated in flashes of light, their formations unraveling under the relentless human barrage. On the Empire's command channel, alien voices barked orders, their arrogance cracking under the realization that humans did not falter. Mara listened to the intercepted fragments, her jaw tightening. They call us vermin, she said quietly. Let them choke on their own words. The first wave collapsed, wreckage drifting like ash across the void, but the Empire pressed harder, cruisers advancing, their heavy batteries charging. The tactical display flared with incoming trajectories, dozens of plasma lances, each capable of gutting a ship. Brace for impact, Alira warned. The flotilla shifted, engines burning in perfect synchronization. Human ships rolled and angled, their shields absorbing the first barrage. Plasma fire scorched across hulls, but the formation held. Return fire answered, railguns and torpedoes slamming into alien cruisers, puncturing their armor with brutal precision. One cruiser erupted, its core detonating in a silent bloom of fire. Another staggered, its systems flickering as human torpedoes carved through its flank. The Empire's arrogance faltered, their formations wavered. Mara's voice cut through the chaos. Push the line, target their carriers, break their spine. The flotilla surged forward, weapons locked on the massive carriers. Alien interceptors scrambled to defend, but humanity's guns were merciless. A carrier's hangar bay exploded, spewing wreckage and burning fighters into the void. Another carrier reeled, its shields collapsing under concentrated fire. The Empire's command channels filled with panic. Their arrogance was bleeding into desperation. Alira turned, her eyes wide. They didn't expect this. They thought the dreadnought was the end of us. Mara's reply was steel. They thought wrong. Humanity doesn't end. We adapt, we endure, and when cornered, we strike harder than they can imagine. The flotilla pressed the assault, every ship firing with ruthless precision. Alien cruisers broke apart, carriers burned, escorts scattered. The Empire's fleet was unraveling, their discipline shattered by the relentless human advance. But Mara knew the battle was not yet won. The dreadnought still lingered, crippled but alive, its massive frame drifting at the edge of the system. Its weapons were silent, but its presence was a shadow over the battlefield. They'll rally around the Dreadnought, Mara said. It's their symbol, their arrogance made flesh. If we leave it, they'll rebuild. If we finish it, they'll break. Alira hesitated. It's wounded, but still dangerous. If it powers its core again, Mara cut her off. Then we die striking, better that than living under their chains. The order went out. Humanity's flotilla turned, weapons locking onto the Dreadnought's husk. Torpedoes streaked forward, railguns thundered, and the void lit with fire. The Dreadnought shuddered, its armor peeling away, its core exposed. Alien voices screamed across the comms, their empire watching its pride collapse. The final volley struck, and the Dreadnought erupted in a silent cataclysm. Its frame tore apart, fragments scattering into the void. The Empire symbol was gone, annihilated by the very species they had sought to erase. Silence followed. The alien fleet faltered, their arrogance shattered. Some ships fled, others drifted, leaderless. Humanity's flotilla held, battered but unbroken. Mara exhaled, her voice carrying across the command deck. Signal the fleet. The Dreadnought is finished. The Empire bleeds, and humanity stands. The crew answered, their voices unified, unwavering. Stand, the void trembled, carrying humanity's defiance across the stars. The Empire had come with everything, and humanity had shown them what it meant to be cornered. The war was not over, but the whispers of the void had changed. Humanity's voice was louder now, sharper, undeniable, and for the first time the Empire feared it.